There is no second best. By becoming rich.
Take all your money, buy Bitcoin.
I say when we sell.
Wake up every morning and say GM.
GM. GM. Today is Saturday. It is the 20th of July. And let's go for daily levels. So, what's been going on? I've been out of action. I've slept for 14 hours. I feel fucking amazing after it. Much better. Highly recommend. So I think the move up on Bitcoin was probably mostly driven by these rumors that are getting stronger about the US having a Bitcoin strategic reserve under Trump. He's talking about going, this is like the ultimate. This is one step before making it legal tender. And it doesn't make Bitcoin the global reserve currency. That's far from that. But for the biggest economy, the biggest nation in the world, America, to officially announce that they want to have Bitcoin in reserve is huge. Because you're saying we are not against this. So think about how big it was when BlackRock and Larry Fink changed his mind. It's like that times 100. Because of the whole nation. It's from a national level. And if you look into like who's behind Trump's campaign, it's a lot of pro-Bitcoiners. I don't think they're good, take aside the politics, I think they're actually probably not the kind of people that you would like. So you've got like most of Silicon Valley, a lot of the tech bros, a lot of the old tech investors all going behind it. So you got Andreessen Horowitz, who are the biggest crypto VCs and like been in tech for decades. You got his vice president, JD Vance, who owns Bitcoin, right? Owns at least $250,000 worth of Bitcoin. I think that's like the amount that you need to disclose as a politician. So he's disclosed that he owns that, probably owns more. He was a VC before as well and then invested in a bunch of crypto Bitcoin based companies. He's backed by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is a Bitcoin maxi and is connected to a bunch of other high and powerful people. But you think about it from the perspective of they have their own motives for doing this. And if the side effect, if the after effect of them doing this is that Bitcoin becomes fucking 2 to 5 times bigger, then that's all we need, right? You can say that like Peter Thiel is basically CIA. He's connected to, or he's not connected to, he founded Palantir, which is like a massive data mining company, which works with intelligence agencies. So like these aren't people that you really want to put all your blind faith and trust in. But as a trader, you just look at it. And also, I don't give a shit because I don't live in America. But if you're American, same as anything, be careful of who you idolize. I wouldn't put my full faith behind anybody. I always say this, like, Trump's not going to save you. Fucking Biden's not going to save you. No politician's going to save you. No billionaire's going to save you. They're not going to do anything for you. You have to do it all for yourself. So obviously, you can have a preference. My clear preference is Trump over Biden. There's no question about that. But it doesn't affect my life in any way, except the trades I take, basically. Right? View everything through the lens of trading and investments and what you can do to better your life from it. But, if you haven't realized by now that every politician makes promises and then doesn't keep them, that's how it's going to be. So I would say good to see Trump steaming ahead. Definitely more pro-Bitcoin. Big inflow day on ETFs yesterday after a couple of slow days. And I don't know about this strategic reserve, how realistic it is and how how sure we are that's going to happen. But it's definitely something they're going to talk about, right? So remember what I said. Politicians will say things to get your vote and then not follow through with it. But the thing is, with Trump not being in, everything he says from now until November is a promise. It's different for Biden. If Biden tries to say something, the public can say, well, wait a minute. You said you're going to do this, go do it. You're the president. You're president now, you could actually do it. Trump has this perfect situation where he can make the promises and doesn't have to keep them once he gets in. I think he will definitely be more pro-Bitcoin. But zooming out, taking this hypothetically, like Bitcoin can easily be 100k if it's recognized and accepted by the US as a valid asset, a valid alternative to gold, and a store of value, and they have it as part of a strategic reserve. Like, that puts Bitcoin to 100k, in my opinion. Especially because this is new, right? This is not something that can be priced in before this week. Because, obviously, to a certain extent, some of the insiders would have known this. They would have known for the past few weeks or maybe a few months that Trump and his closest, Bitcoin maxi or Bitcoin friendly advisors and JD Vance and all these people, they probably would have known they were talking about it. But the market could not price this in for several reasons. Number one, he's not president, so you can't put a strong probability on it anyway. And then number two, this was not public knowledge. So I do genuinely, like, if that actually happens, I think that is a catalyst to go towards 100k. Like, I think that is the catalyst you're waiting for. This is something that Bitcoin maxis have dreamed about for fucking 10 years, right? You have to remember, like, America has always been officially anti-Bitcoin. Like, they've never said, no president's ever endorsed Bitcoin, and there's never been anything other than hostility towards Bitcoin from the White House and from politicians. Obviously, you've got politicians in Congress that are like pro-Bitcoin, but they're never like the super high up ones. It's usually like the highest up are anti-Bitcoin, and a few smaller, probably usually younger politicians will get together and they will lobby for Bitcoin, and they've done a lot of good work. This is next level stuff. So yeah, it's a seal of approval. It de-risks Bitcoin, like, completely. It puts it into the category of, a viable alternative asset. And it's also smart. It makes complete sense, because if you were going to do this, the way you would do it is, a lot of times people think that, well, last cycle we got El Salvador, and El Salvador went pro-Bitcoin, and then the way you would think about it is, okay, that's a small little country that's gone pro-Bitcoin, and you have MicroStrategy, which is a small company going pro-Bitcoin, and you would say, oh, well, next there's going to be a slightly bigger country, maybe like Argentina. Next there's going to be a slightly bigger company, maybe like Dell or fucking one of these. Not one of the biggest, but the next one. And then slowly over time, you'll have more and more and more, bigger and bigger, until you get all the way up to the biggest. And like America's going to be the last one to accept Bitcoin. And, Apple or Google, they're going to be the last companies to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. That actually doesn't make sense from if you think about, like, kind of a game theory perspective, especially as a geopolitical thing, especially now where Bitcoin is, and you look at America versus their enemies, you have all the reason for America to get out ahead of it. Why would America wait for 10 other nations beneath them to accept Bitcoin or to have a strategic reserve when they can take that mantle and be first. So there's only positives to doing it. There's no negatives. It's small enough currently, and I think this is also kind of smart if you think about it, if it does happen. This is all still very hypothetical. Bitcoin's small enough currently where it's not a threat to the dollar at all. It's not even remotely a threat. It's like a $1 trillion asset. 1.2, 1.3 trillion. It's nowhere near the size that it would need to be to have any kind of relevance at all as a reserve currency. So it's no threat. It's the perfect time to do it. If you're saying that Bitcoin is a threat to the dollar being a bad thing for them. Rather than if they delayed and waited 10 years when Bitcoin's $10 trillion and it's as big as gold or bigger, and it's been used by all the BRICS countries and everyone has fled to Bitcoin and then they have no choice but to go, that's obviously a much worse situation, right? So, makes sense. I also see that now as being something that would catalyze some of the bigger companies in the world to do it, just as a, well, you might as well have some Bitcoin on your balance sheet. And these are now like big factors that could push Bitcoin a lot higher. So what's going to happen, in my opinion, is this could be like the ETF rally all over again, except now everyone who's in is able to front run the US government, right? You're not actually front running them because they already have, the US government have like 200,000 Bitcoin or whatever in from Silk Road, and so they already have their strategic reserve. Don't forget, the US government have a lot of seized Bitcoin that they haven't sold yet. And I remember talking about this last year. I kept saying, why have they not continued to sell? And then BlackRock applied for an ETF, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. The US government sold a little bit at the start, and they said they were going to sell all of it by the end of 2023. Then they mysteriously stopped selling. Then suddenly BlackRock applied for an ETF. And so at that point, you're like, so they've been told, BlackRock was like, why the fuck would you sell these coins? We're about to run the price up 2x, 3x, right? But now it becomes even higher, even better again, because these rumors about the strategic reserve and all of that are only positive because they already hold a lot of Bitcoin. The majority of Bitcoin is now in America, so it's either in ETFs like BlackRock, Fidelity, etc. So it's custodied within America, or it's with MicroStrategy in America. So a huge percentage of the Bitcoin total supply is based in America. And even though they don't directly own that Bitcoin, they could at any point, seize it if they wanted to. I can't remember the name of the law. It's a 1043 or some shit. It's like some numbers where they can put out essentially like an executive order to seize that Bitcoin. But anyway, a lot of this is hypothetical. But it's the hypothetical that will drive the price. So if you wait, just use the exact same example, right? The rumors about the Bitcoin ETF really started over here when BlackRock applied, okay? When Bitcoin was at 26, 27. Then the rumors strengthened with the fake ETF news, which again was at 27, 28k. If you waited then until the ETF actually launched, you would have bought the absolute top on the day of the ETF and had to eat a 20% drawdown immediately, right? Obviously, we went higher thereafter, but the trade for expectations of the ETF was basically everything that's on the screen. That was the Bitcoin ETF trade. So this is when the strong rumors began after BlackRock applied, okay? This, you could consider this candle from yesterday to be the strong rumors beginning of the Bitcoin strategic reserve in the US. So I would expect that this is probably something that goes until January of next year, which actually gives it lots of very similar parallels, because the rumors began in June and the ETF launched in January. The rumors begin in July and Trump gets in January if he wins. The reason for January obviously is that he can talk all he wants about the strategic reserve. He can't do anything until he's in office. So it gives you the exact same time frame, give or take a couple of weeks, to price in something that's even bigger than ETFs And the closer we get to it, the stronger the rumors are going to become. I see no reason to not be fully long Bitcoin, like spot long Bitcoin, until January 2025. I see no reason. In fact, I'm going to swap so for the last few weeks, remember, I've been 80% Bitcoin, 20% ETH. I'm actually going to swap it all into Bitcoin. I'm going to swap the 20% ETH back over into Bitcoin. I don't care about ETH ETF. That's fine. Great. But it's like any time ETH tries to get any momentum, Bitcoin just comes out and shits all over it with a bigger narrative and a better talking points. And so far this cycle, it's been a Bitcoin cycle. I mean, you see this with ETH BTC. And ETH BTC is heading in the wrong direction. So consider this as confirmation that ETH BTC, for me, is not bullish yet. And I don't think it will be. And this entire cycle has been Bitcoin. And this cycle will continue to be Bitcoin probably until ETH goes to 0.035. That's just looking at the inefficiency area, and that would fill in. Or until it, breaks above 0.06 and shows some strength. The main thing is, I think it's irresponsible to not be long Bitcoin with what's happened in the last 10 days. To be spot long. I mean, being spot long is the best play anyway. That was always the approach that I've had for the past several months. But I think that this is one of the, you could not get a better setup. You really could not get a better setup for Bitcoin. And the good thing, the most bullish thing about it is that we won't know if it's true until January. So you're going to have some FUD in between. Think of it like the ETF trade. You're going to have some periods in between where between June 23 and January 24, there were headlines, the ETFs are going to be rejected, and you'd see a dip in Bitcoin, right? SEC is saying that they're not going to pass it, approve it, blah, blah, blah. Same thing will happen. There'll be some article about how this strategic reserve doesn't make sense and blah, 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 and it'll dip down. But you can be sure that as long as it's still being talked about by the key people involved, all the way up until January, and Trump is speaking at the Bitcoin conference next week, and previously when he was, after the assassination attempt, some of you were asking me, would the conference make a big difference? And I said, probably not, because he's already going to speak. So he spoke already at the Republican National Convention, or whatever the fuck you call it, RNC committee. And so originally I said the Bitcoin conference would be the biggest if it was his first speaking engagement. But now, I mean, if someone's going to ask him about a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and Trump's smart, he's not going to say no to a crowd full of Bitcoiners. He's going to say, I think Bitcoin is great, and Bitcoin is a solid place in the blah, 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 and we want to mine all the Bitcoins here, and blah, blah, blah. So he's going to talk it up. And I think that's part of it too. I think it's the 23rd of July, if I'm not mistaken, the convention, the Bitcoin Nashville. And yeah, so I mean, you're just going to get the mother of all bullish narratives. This is one of the biggest bullish narratives ever. So as for actual timing of trades, like swing trades, where you have entry, stop loss, take profit, that is a separate issue entirely. If the market goes from being bearish or fearful or short and flips long too quickly, you can see volatility in both directions, absolutely. I don't think this was a long enough consolidation for my liking. I think we can pull back. I'll talk about that on Trade of the Day. But just like, it's just the same as June of 2023. Just like the only right thing to do here was be spot long Bitcoin. And even though you had to sit through a few months where it didn't go straight up, or same in October, you just had to get spot long, or when this breakout happened I mentioned, there's probably not going to be a pullback, just you need to be long. I talked here about how my friends that were sidelined were telling me, big traders were saying we're just buying. We just have to buy, and it never pulled back. This is one of those areas. It's one of those times. For me, being spot long until at least January, or until something significantly changes, is the only sensible option. Best thing you could hope for, I guess, would be like a repeat of this. You see here we had this strong rally up. Then you had that short consolidation breakout candle, and then you have a sideways correction around here and sideways correction around here till it catches up with the bands. Bitcoin will absolutely 100% retest the daily bands at some point. It always does in every single uptrend. The question becomes where from. But buying it when it's so far away from them is generally not a good idea. If you're getting, if you're adding a swing long, right, that's an important point. But being spot long makes complete sense. As for altcoins, I don't see, again, this is the same as the Bitcoin ETF. Yes, some alts will do okay, but this puts Bitcoin fully in the spotlight. And so when you look at like which shitcoin should I buy, I feel like it's the same, it's a repeat all over again of the ETF trade, where actually the correct trade is just Bitcoin. And as always happens, if we do go up and if Bitcoin does break out and goes higher, altcoins will eventually have their time and you'll buy the ones that have the best setup. But this Bitcoin dominance chart is just showing no weakness and has not shown any weakness for, months now. And it seems like there's still another push ahead in Bitcoin dominance, which probably is going to come, going into Q3, going into Q4 and towards the election. This has probably accelerated the timeline as well. I think that news and I think the idea of the strategic reserve and all that, I think that's easily enough to take us back to all-time high. Whether it's going to break out that soon, that's a different matter entirely, but I think the repricing, is now pricing in a world in which Bitcoin is so much more favorable, so much more than just Trump saying, I like Bitcoin. It's going one step beyond that. So the big risk for this is that Trump comes out and says, no, this is not a thing. It's not a thing we are considering. This is just fake news. I don't see how that makes no sense. First of all, the rumors don't come from nowhere. And this isn't a rumor where it's like one guy on Twitter. This has been a rumor that's, been at least corroborated by some reliable sources. But the biggest thing is Trump. He's a salesman. The rumor is out there. There's an election coming up. He wants to play into the Bitcoin crowd. Why would he say no? He can just say, we'll see. He can say, oh, yeah, nothing's off the table. If he says anything other than no, Bitcoin maxis are like, holy shit, we're voting for Trump, right? So it's a very low risk that he actually comes out and says, no way, not at all. But there's still a chance for that. But otherwise, I think this is once again becoming a Bitcoin market for me. Solana is also a decent trade. If you're looking at an election trade, Solana is a decent trade. And again, this is probably why Sol, I don't know what Sol ETH is looking like, but it's probably up. Yeah. Sol ETH is going to be up because Solana is a better bet than Ethereum again, believe it or not. ETH is the ETF, sure. And that will probably attract some flows. But Bitcoin is stronger narrative with the strategic reserve. And Solana is a better election play because it gets de-risked. If Trump were to win, and Gensler's gone, and Elizabeth Warren is gone, and there's a new SEC chair, and there's a pro-crypto administration, the first thing people are going to look at is Solana and say, oh, well, then it's going to get an expedited ETF. And so that makes Solana a better bet for the next 6 months. Because a lot of what was priced into Solana before would have been the negative outcome of, oh, this ETF can't happen because, they don't have a futures market, blah, blah, blah. A lot of that gets de-risked if the pro-crypto administration comes in. So that's why Solana makes more sense. And people will try to position for that. And again, it's just like the crypto thing. You don't want to wait until if you wait until there's actually announcement of a strategic reserve in February 2025 when they actually say, here it is officially in writing. If you wait until then to buy Bitcoin, you're an idiot. All right? The whole point is you have to buy when it's still a rumor. That's the risk you take. If you're waiting for confirmation, then you are choosing to pay the premium. So the same thing is like, if you're waiting until Trump wins, and until he says, Gary Gensler, you're fired, and then you're going to buy Solana because you think that Solana is a good bet for an ETF. Again, Solana will be double the price it is now, and you're paying that premium. It doesn't mean you always just buy stuff because there's rumors. That's not what I'm saying at all. But when you're trading around narratives of a cycle, it has to be when there's still some doubt, right? BlackRock applied for an ETF, but then there was immediately a bunch of FUD. It wasn't guaranteed. And this is the problem. This is the problem with the Ethereum. Why do you think Ethereum has had no good price action since that a rumor, right? Since the rumor came out and we had that sharp repricing, why could it not make a new high? Why did it retrace the whole thing? Because there's an absence of doubt. You're not early. BlackRock applied for their ETH ETF over here, right? So that was when BlackRock applied for ETH ETF. Then, so which is at 2,000 to 2,100. And then over here, after this impulse, when they said, oh, it's actually going to happen, people start buying at 3,700. They're paying the premium. The time to buy was here. The front running was there. All the way up, all the way up, all the way up. People who bought theirs got sold into. And now, we know the ETF's coming. We know how much is priced in. There's probably priced in more flows than people actually expect. And so there's no edge in buying Ethereum because of an ETF. There's zero edge in buying it now because of ETF. It's happening. It's done. There's no doubt. There needs to be some doubt. If I ask people about a Bitcoin strategic reserve, normies, they would laugh. They'd what? America, they're not going to adopt Bitcoin. They're not going to lie, right? So you have that disbelief. If you talk about the ETF, crypto people, crypto traders, because we went through 10 years of ETF rejections. In July, August, September, October, November of last year, when we talked about Bitcoin ETFs, they would laugh at you. Yeah, it's going to get rejected like all the others. Doubt. You ask people about Ethereum ETF since the 20th of May, they're like, oh, yeah, it's happening. 100%. No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, it's too late. Not too late to buy Ethereum in total. Ethereum can go way higher for different reasons. It's too late to buy for that specific reason. It's too late to say, we like Ethereum because of the ETF, right? So you ask about Solana, people will still say, no, it can't happen. So, not saying Solana is something you should just randomly ape into either, but it does present a more compelling case right now. And anyway, that's long enough. GM. See you later on the live stream. We'll talk more about this. 4 p.m. UTC. GM.